Welcome to the basics video, where I go over the basics of the phone that the average person will care about. This video is for the Samsung Galaxy Note 9. Feel free to check out my specs video for a more detailed explanation of this phone. The Samsung-made Note 9 has a dual aperture 12 megapixel camera along with a 12 megapixel telephoto sensor on the back, and on the front there is a focusable 8 megapixel sensor. As expected by a Samsung phone, the camera is outstanding. Really, the camera setup is pretty much the same as the Samsung S9 Plus, which you already know is one of the best in the market before this phone. Really, this camera is just catching up and is obviously an upgraded Note 8 camera. I'm not a fan of live focus, which is Samsung's version of portrait mode, but it's not that bad. The front camera version of this, however, is hit or miss. Speaking of, the front camera can focus, just like the Samsung S8, and I find that to be pretty amazing. I wish other companies would copy this as well. While it isn't as nice as the Pixel 3's front cameras, it's still a really nice feature. Back to the rear cameras, let's talk about some more important features. Like the S9, the Note 9 has a dual aperture sensor, which gives you better night shots without using software. If you don't care about that too much, you can use the secondary sensor to optically zoom 2 times, just like the Note 8. Another similarity to the Note 8 is that both sensors have optical image stabilization, which is the best for stable photos and videos. Speaking of videos, they come out looking very professional, as you would expect. I mean, it's technically the same camera that I use to record all of these videos, except for I'm using the Galaxy S9 Plus. Video recording maxes out at 4K 60 frames per second, as you would expect, along with a bunch of other variations in 30 frames per second video capture. There were reports of freezing cameras, but I'm not sure what happened with that. I never had that issue, but if it does happen, Samsung should fix it under warranty. The camera does what I need and way more, so I will give the cameras a 9 out of 10. The software is almost exactly the same as the Galaxy S9 Plus prior to the Pi update, but the Note 9 is on 8.1 Oreo. 9.0 Pi should be coming out soon, but as of this video, it is not out. The software gets the job done, and there isn't really too much bulk in this, which I'm very glad that Samsung is finally understanding. Having 6 GB of RAM also helps, and the Samsung S9 Plus also has the same thing. Samsung does lag when it comes to coming out with software updates, but as for the phone, it doesn't happen that often. Even though it is Samsung's skin over Android, there's still a decent amount of customization and gestures that Samsung incorporated into this phone. Some of these features are annoying, just like the implementation of Bixby. For some reason, I didn't really think of using Bixby, but I remembered the situation that happened with the Note 9 keynote, and I remembered why people don't even care about using Bixby. To be fair, I rarely even use a Google Assistant, so.
My apologies. I don't understand.
We still have the normal stuff, like the always-on display and the pressure-sensitive home button, which works fine for me. The software is fine, and the Android Pie version, or Samsung One UI, looks awkward, so maybe this is a good thing that it's still stuck on Android 8.1. Still, a gesture system would help this phone out a little bit. As for the use of the pen, it's actually pretty cool. I pretty much only used it like 5 times, but I can't just ignore what Samsung has done. The pen's charge lasts a while out of the phone and only takes about 30 seconds to charge, which isn't bad. The pen uses Bluetooth so you can trigger certain options in certain apps, and while it sounds like a gimmick, it can be pretty useful. Also, these replacement pens cost about $30, so they better do some crazy stuff. It allows you to trigger certain tasks when you hold the button, single or double tap the button. I think it's pretty cool. Lastly, there are some small bugs that I found, and this is the only one that I can easily reproduce. I don't get what's going on, but it does happen. Anyway, the software could be better if they move towards a stock look, so it gets a 7.75 out of 10. The battery, like the camera, is amazing. With that said, I would assume that the 4000 mAh cell would be better, but I guess this just proves that the processors aren't as efficient as they say that they are. Getting through the day is pretty easy, but with 4000 mAh, you would assume that by now we should be able to get through 2 days easily, but that's not the case. After 16 hours and 42 minutes of usage, my phone was left with 19%, and 3 hours and 23 minutes of that was screen on time. Another day I got 14 hours and 41 minutes of usage with 54% remaining, and 2 hours and 14 minutes of that was screen on time. Another day I got 15 hours and 9 minutes of usage out of this battery with 38% remaining, and 4 hours and 5 minutes of that was screen on time. All of these figures are with the screen set to 1440p and the brightness all the way up. The battery life sounds good, even what I said sounds awesome, but it is a little bit disappointing. Really, the battery is what the Note 8 should have had, so compared to the Note 8, obviously the battery is awesome. When compared to a phone like the OnePlus 6T, it's pretty much the same. Again, getting through the day is easy, but getting through 2 days would be very tough. I guess that's why we have Quick Charge 2.0 in this phone. Overall, the battery category receives an 8.25 out of 10. So of course we have to compare the Note 9 to the Note 8. The Note 9, oddly enough, is shorter by a smidge, but it is wider. The Note 9 is also slightly thicker and heavier. The screen is larger by 0.1 inches to be exact, and the black bar on the bottom, for whatever reason, is thinner. The buttons on the side are the same, just placed a little bit higher. The back of the phone looks almost the same, but the camera area is smaller and the fingerprint scanner now sits under the cameras. Finally. Speaking of, the back cameras are almost exactly the same, except for the middle sensor has a dual aperture setup. As for the inside, the battery is now an appropriate size, moving up 700 mAh to 4000 mAh, which is the biggest battery that I've tested in any phone. The processor, GPU, and RAM all move from the Snapdragon 835 chip to the Snapdragon 845 chip, as well as the RAM moving from 6GB to 8GB if you have the 512GB version. The 128GB version, like mine, only has 6GB of RAM. Lastly, there are minor additions like the new S Pen, 128GB base storage, dual speaker setup, and 4K 60 frames per second capability. Overall, I would say that the Note 9 is a reasonable and expected upgrade, so it gets an 8.5 out of 10. Even though this phone is still relatively new, parts are already cheap, so to speak. The screen can break fairly easily and will cost you about $240 to fix it yourself or $320 for a third party to do it for you. The camera breaks often and will cost you about $6 or $35 for a third party to fix it for you. The back will break at some point as well and will cost you about $10 to do it yourself or $55 to $75 for a third party to do it for you. The charging port can be replaced for $11 and luckily doesn't require soldering. A third party should charge you about $65 to $85 to do this for you. The battery will need to be replaced at some point and will run you about $15 to do it yourself or $85 for a third party to do it for you. I would assume that the batteries are OEM if they do look like normal Samsung batteries, but it shouldn't really matter that much. Samsung should be able to change all of these parts for you, so check with them before breaking stuff on your phone. Another thing is that only Samsung can guarantee water resistance after the repair, but even then I would still keep the phone away from water. Given the prices and repairability, I would say that the Note 9 gets a 7 out of 10 for durability and repair cost. Now should you buy this phone, with a score of 81%, I would say that this phone is an amazing choice, but it is a very expensive one. The screen is amazing, the camera is amazing, I mean, everything's amazing. So in some ways the $1,000 price tag makes sense, but at the same time, I can't see myself spending that much money and being happy with that decision. There are many deals out there for new or used versions of this phone, so whatever you do, don't spend $1,000 on this phone. But if this isn't your first review video for this phone, then I think I know what you're gonna do. But don't worry, I think that you'll enjoy the choice that you made. I hope you learned something from these videos, but now I want to learn something from you. Is it appropriate for a phone to cost over $1,000? Let me know in the comment section or on Twitter at MattofRWR, and feel free to follow me on the social media listed above. Also subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos like this. And if you really like these videos, hit that bell button. Thanks for watching.